Patra. Dr. Patra is a professor of sociology at Shidokano Birsa University, Purulia. He is the former coordinator of Center for South Asian Studies at the university itself. Professor Patra is also the convener of the research community on sociology of care, RC27 of Indian Sociological Society. At present, he is associated as co-principal investigator with a mega research project on science and technology, intervention for tribal development, sponsored by the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. The title of his lecture today is Social Science Research and Some Ethical Issues. Okay, thank you, sir. Over to you.
Good morning. I am really thankful to you all, particularly Professor Sudeshna Basu Mukherjee. She is like my elder sister, my very, very close friend like sister, Sushmita, and HOD Lisa there. I'm thankful to all of you for giving me the chance to share my ideas and my understanding on this issue, which is, kind of a burning issue in today's sociological research. I will divide my lecture into three parts. This is to make the students understand better. The first part, I will make a necessary distinction between what do we mean by investigation and what do we mean by research. There is a distinction between investigation and research, and the entire ethical concern stands on that. So, in the first part, I will discuss the distinction between what we mean by investigation and what we mean by research. And I will tell you one of a very, very interesting story in which I was involved to mediation and research. Then I will, very brief manner, I will discuss what do we mean by ethics or ethical issues itself. What is that? And finally, in the third section, I will deal with the actual issues that we encounter as a researcher, as a student of sociology, as a researcher of sociology. So let us start with my first section, that is, what is the distinction between investigation and research. And if you can follow me, I think some of the issues will be cleared. Very simply speaking, investigation is to find out something which is under the carpet, which is not visible as such, and sometimes which is very, very difficult to obtain also. So this is investigation. Finding out something. In sociological research or in any kind of research, we also find out something, but purpose is different. In existing storehouse of knowledge, to challenge the existing storehouse of knowledge. That means, if I tell you in a different way, we want to theorize something. We want to make some generalizations. In case of investigation, we generally do not generalize. We generally do not build up certain theories. We generally do not build up certain storehouse of knowledge. Just a study. When I was preparing some draft notes for your lecture, I lost my pen, and my son, who is just 13 years, found it. It went under my cot and said, you are preparing research, a topic on research, and I have researched a lot and find out your pain. I said that no, this is not at all research. This is this can be an investigation. You investigated my pain, where it has gone, and you find it out. But if you, after finding out so many things, if you come to the conclusion that all fathers lose pain, then a kind of generalization may come, and then you can say you have researched it. So I think in case of research, we we look at generalized patterns, develop certain generalized techniques. I will tell you one story. Uh, on 24th July 2017, all the print media, news media of our country was shattered by a news. It was a murder of a just 3.5-year-old Supriya. I think most of you will remember this incident. Little Supriya was 3.5 years old, and he was in her stepfather's house and with her mom. On 24th July 2017, all the national media came with the news that 7 large-sized needles were found in the abdomen of little Supriya. She was murdered in that way. 7 needles were inserted by her stepfather with the help of her mother, and she was killed. Government immediately formed an investigating team, and I was fortunate enough to be a member of that. This incident happened in Purulia, in the Nadiara village, and I went along with all police officers and other officers, and I interrogated the mothers and the father of that little girl, and we found all minute details. It was published. If you can find out the newspapers of 2017 July 25th, 26th, you will find my statements, and all larger investigations reveal the same things which we could find it out. You can remember that in telling this story of little Supriya, I am using their names. The name of her mother is Mongola. The name of her stepfather is Sanatan. And the name of the unfortunate girl is Supriya. If it was a research, some ethical concerns prevented me of telling their names. I could not reveal the names of those persons. As it was an investigation, I have nothing ethical issue to reveal their name because it has been proved in the court of law that they were the culprits, Sanatan and Mongola. So this is the difference between investigation and research. There are so many ethical issues also lie with the investigation kind of process. But those things are different. Those ethical issues are different from which we encounter in our sociological research, social science researches. So this is the first part of my lecture. Mind that the ethical issues also involve between you and your supervisors. Sometimes students do not go to the field and come to the supervisor, tell that, sir or madam, I have gone frequently to the field and I have collected so many data. So this is unethical, dishonest. I am not telling these kind of ethical issues. Mind that. there are so many ethical issues involved in research that happen between you and your supervisor. I'm not going into the detail of those things. I'm only concerned with those ethical issues which happen between you and your respondent. Make it clear first that I'm not dealing here with all kinds of ethical issues. I am dealing with those issues which appear between you and your respondent, between you and your field. You will be surprised to know that field work, that means focus on respondents, which today's research, sociological research often do, that we focus on our respondents. We build up a cult of respondents. So this kind of research, what we generally respondents, start 98, 99, and it started with a Cambridge University group of anthropologists. They went to different Torres Strait region and collected certain data. So this was the starting of field work. And during that time, ethical issues did not took the center stage. The ethical issues we are talking about appeared in sociological research much later, particularly during 1960s. The ethical issues. In short, what we should do with our respondents, to what extent we can peep into their life, and so forth and so on. All these ethical issues appeared took the center stage during 1960s, not before that. Interestingly, the major ethical concerns, which came to the fore in 1960s have remained same today. I will discuss today were discussed in 1960s also. This is interesting sociologically, epistemologically also, that there has not been much change in ethical concerns so far as social science research is concerned. We thought about certain things in 1960s, and those things are today are also relevant. So these are the initial points I would like to make to go into the second part of my lecture. What do we mean by ethics? I repeat that today I will concentrate only on those issues that appear before you and your respondent, nothing else. There are so many things that plagiarism issue, dishonesty issue, many other issues involved in different stages of social science research. But today I will focus only on a small part, that is what happens between you and your respondent. Today we believe that we worship respondent rather. We worship the art of respondents, and there are certain things that we should not do, and there are certain things that we should do with our respondents. This is the first part. Now I will move to my second part. That is, what do we mean by ethics? You all know that ethics means what is right, what is just, what is proper. And in any discipline, to be ethical means to conform certain standard code of conduct. This is simple. If you are a doctor, you will have to follow certain code of conduct. If you are an engineer, you have to follow certain code of conduct. If you are a lawyer, you have to follow certain code of conduct. Similarly, if you are a social scientist, you have to follow certain code of conduct. This is the ethics. In a very famous book, uh, Norman Denzin. Norman Denzin, I think most of you have heard the name of Norman Denzin. He's a famous sociologist. Norman Denzin has traced these ethical issues uh, uh, with the time of enlightenment. How? According to Norman Denzin, these ethical issues are directly is related with the autonomy of the individual. This is very interesting, and uh, I I would like to mention it here because most of the standard research methodology books have not touched upon this point. This is a very interesting point that all the ethical issues I will discuss in my last section of my lecture are all related to a kind of enlightenment mind. That mind which particularly emphasizes on human freedom, human dignity, human autonomy. Even John Stuart Mills often often told his students that respect the autonomy of individuals when you go to the field. So all the ethical issues I will discuss, all the issues, number one, number two, number three, number four, and so forth and so on. But mind that these all the issues are related directly or indirectly with a kind of enlightenment philosophy. That philosophy which emphasized on individuality, which emphasized on human freedom and individual autonomy. That means when you are collecting data from your respondent, you should give honor. You should honor the autonomy of the individuals, of your respondent, and all the ethical issues. I discussed 1, 2, 3, 4. And all these ethical issues are directly or indirectly related to, to honor the autonomy, honor the privacy, honor the individuality of the respondent. Having said this, I will discuss one important point before going to the actual ethical things. That is the question of value neutrality. Because so many things, right from John Stuart Mill to Max Weber to many other sociologists, they have talked about value neutrality. When you are considering certain ethical issues, the question appears, are we deviating from that norm of value neutrality, objectivity? So Max Weber himself has given the answer that no, when we look at the ethical issues, uh, during the time of Max Weber, these ethical issues came to the fore in sociological researches, and Max Weber himself opined that that when we consider the ethical issues, we are just honoring the dignity, rights, and individuality of the respondents. We are not mixing up our own values with those with during the time of analysis. So this is a kind of reflexivity. This is a kind of reflexivity. I think all of you have heard the first lecture delivered by Professor Dictoman, where he told that reflexivity is very important in case of social science research. So when we as a researcher, try to understand the rights, dignity, of the respondents, much of the problem of ethical issues are solved. After pointing out these two things, that is, social science research is different from social investigation, number one. Number two, I have said that when I will go to this part, I will consider only the ethical issues that appear between you and your respondent, not between you and your supervisor, you and your other co-researchers. I am not discussing all those things. I am discussing the issues that can uh, that can uh, make you kind of tensed while taking decisions regarding what we should do, keeping the ethical norms intact. So I am discussing the things that appear between you and your respondent. And the number three, that all the ethical issues revolve around two, three things. That is freedom of the respondents, autonomy of the respondents, and dignity, privacy of the respondents. Having said these things, now I will go to the third section. Actual ethical concerns. Always, research scholars come to us, sir, these are the problems that we are facing. And most of these problems, we the supervisor know it well, that revolve around the ethical issues. First thing appears, always the new researchers come to us. I think some of you at least have this experience, that the respondents are not giving answers. Always our students, our scholars come to us, sir, we are asking questions, but they are not answering. They are going away. What should we do? Number one ethical issue is we should ensure their voluntary participation. Their participation must be voluntary. You cannot force your respondent to give answers. This is number one ethical issue that you should keep in your mind while going to the field, while selecting your respondent, while collecting data. That you cannot force your respondent to give answer. Look, when with the scheduler questionnaire, you knock the door of your respondent, or you go to the courtyard of a village. Mind that you are peeping into the personal life of that person. I repeat it once again. When you are keeping in mind that I will collect data with the help of certain prefixed questions, scheduler questionnaire, you are entering into the courtyard, asking, Dada, please come, answer my question. You started peeping into the life. You started collecting some personal information from that person. So their participation must be voluntary. You cannot force it. You have to build up rapport, you have to convince them, and then if they are ready to help you, then only you can ask questions. A very buzzword has come, informed consent. In social science research, this word is very popular today, informed consent. That is, you have to discuss what do you want to know, what is your purpose, what type of questions are there in your schedule or questionnaire. This is informed consent. There are so many difficulties I know in conforming to this norm. In many researches, you have to hide your purpose. Otherwise, you will not be able to collect the right answer. Anyway, you have to. There are certain solutions also. I'll come to that part later. But right now, note that voluntary participation is a must. Understand that you will ask some questions to your respondents and record those data. There are many other persons, they ask personal information like doctors. When you go to a doctor's chamber, doctor will ask you so many questions. When you go to the chamber of a lawyer, he or she will ask you many personal questions. Similarly, when you will ask your respondent, you ask many personal questions. You want to know many things about your respondent. But the difference is when a doctor asks a question, that is for your benefit. When a lawyer asks you a question, even some private question, personal question, it is for you. But when as a researcher you are asking question, it is for your benefit. This is the difference. Understand my point? Have you understood my point?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I repeat. Where is the difficulty? Difficulty is a doctor asks some personal questions. Lawyer asks some personal questions. Even engineers can ask, what is your income? You have made so elaborate plan. What is your income? That is a personal question. But that is for you. A doctor wants to treat you. A lawyer wants to solve your problem. But when you are asking question, that is not for the direct benefit of those respondents. It is for you. So you have to be cautious. In USA, all the drugs before it is made public, all the drugs are administered on the prisoners in USA. All the drugs. But before administration, before giving them the drug, they are properly informed that this is the drug and you will not be benefited, your jail term will not be curtailed, it is only for the medical purpose you are served drugs. So this is informed consent what I was talking about, but the participation should be voluntary. If a prisoner in USA asks, they don't give me that drug, I don't want to be a guinea pig. So this drug is not given to those who do not want. So similarly, voluntary participation is very important, and mind that there is a chance that at any point the respondent has the right to withdraw himself or herself from the process of giving answer. I will not give answer. I will stop. Even he can say or she can say that please delete those answers. I do not want that answer. For example, you have asked one question that what is your actual income? He has said my income is 10,000 per month. After saying that, he has given or she has given the right answer. After saying that, if he or she thinks that no, I will not divulge the actual income of my family and ask you please delete that answer, you are bound to delete that because your respondents are not your slave. They are not bound to give you all answers. It is the skill of the researcher. It is the skill of the researcher, expertise of the researcher to collect data as much as possible with the kind consent of the respondents. In many researches, many social science researches, it is very difficult. It is very difficult to divulge all the purpose of even our our great uh, sociologist Emil Srinivas when visited Rampura village. You know the famous book Remembered Village, Rampura village he visited, conducted participant observation there. At first, he did not divulge his identity. He did not divulge. He took a rent uh, in a house and started observing the behavior of Rampura, the villagers of Rampura. But in you can say how participant observation is possible if I divulge my identity, because uh, in case of participant observation, often we want to look the natural behavior, normal behavior in the normal setting. If you divulge the if you divulge your identity, if you say that I am a researcher and I have come here to observe your, observe your behavior in the natural setting, the natural your day-to-day life, I want to observe. Participant observation is not possible. Anyway, there are solutions I have said, but mind that voluntary participation is a almost must in case of social science research. Then the second, one more important point lies here, apart from those problem of participant observations. If you if you discard those who do not want to give your answer, your sample will be restricted. The problem of generalization, because a large number of respondents you have to leave because they are not willing to give you answer. So this is a problem. That how can a general statement uh, be derived in case of a sample which itself is composed of those who are willing, because a large number of respondents will not give you the consent. So this is a problem. However, the thing is you have to keep it in your mind that you should you should ensure voluntary participation as much as possible. The second issue, first issue is voluntary participation. You have to ensure that. Second issue, the issue of anonymity. What is that? You should not divulge the name of your respondent. It may create problems for them. So this is the issue of anonymity. In many social science research, anonymity becomes a problem because many theses I go through, I find that there are some photographs of the respondents. It grossly violates the rule of anonymity if you can give photograph of your respondent only if he or she wants it to give in your thesis or in your book. So it grossly violates the rule of anonymity because anonymity should be ensured. How can the anonymity? What is anonymity? After taking the information, you yourself will not be able to identify who has given this response. This is anonymity, simply. That after taking the response, you yourself as a researcher will also not be able to identify the respondent. This is anonymity. The problem is in most of the times we have to recontact with the respondents. You have to go to the respondents again and again. That is a problem, but after you ensure that the responses from that particular respondent is over, you do not need any additional information, then you can delete his name or her name from your schedule, and that will help you to the respondent anonymous. So mind that the problem of anonymity is lies with you, because anonymity demands that even the researcher will not be able to identify the respondents after taking it from the respondent himself or herself. This is the problem of anonymity. The second issue is the problem of confidentiality. It goes along with the problem of anonymity. First issue is voluntary or participation. The second issue is the issue of anonymity, in which you have to hide the identity of the respondents. You should not divulge the respondent's identity. And third one is confidentiality. What is that? Confidentiality is the thing that depends on you, because even if you can identify the identity of the respondent, you will not divulge that piece of information to the public. Understand my point? This is the issue of
Yes, sir.
This is the issue of confidentiality. In case of anonymity, anonymity demands that the researcher himself will not be able to, or herself will not be able to identify. In case of confidentiality, the things are a bit different. Even if you can identify that this response has come from that person, but you will not, or you should not divulge it, you should not make it public. So you have to be sensitized. You have to be sensitized that what information I will give in my thesis and what information I will conceal. One very promising sociologist, Rick Scars, in 1990, Rick Scars, R-I-K, Rick, S-C-A-R-C, Rick Scars, was a scholar of Washington State University and a very prominent member of American Sociological Society. Rick Scars in 1990 conducted one research on the animal activists, those who deal with animals, pets, etc. So, and in 1990, Rick Scars published his book, Eco Warriors. The name of the book is Eco Warriors, Understanding Radical Environmental Movements. In 1990, this book was published. In this book, Rick Scars collected data, some activists who dealt with animals' rights. After publication, it went to the court. Some people went to the court against Rick Scars. Court summoned Rick Scars, and a continuous interrogation took place. And the juries asked Rick Scars to divulge the name of the activists he has interrogated, he has collected data from. Rick Scars declined to divulge the name of those activists from which the data. Understand the problem. Rick Scars declined when the judges asked, divulge the names. Rick Scars declined. In 32 times, in 32 questions, Rick Scars declined to divulge the identities of his respondents. And you will be surprised to know that Rick Scars, a young sociologist of Washington State University in the year 1993, was sentenced to jail. He spent in a county jail for 159 days, despite the fact that American Sociological Association fought along with him, but he was rigid in his ethical stance that I should not divulge the names of my respondents. Just 2 months ago, I went to Bombay University to take, dissertation, in a fourth semester dissertation viva. One very nice student, excellent student, conducted a dissertation on child labor. It was a fantastic one. I asked the student that you have conducted this study on child labor of Malda town. You know child labor is legally offensive, illegal. Yes, sir, I know. The boy replied. Then I said, have you informed police that this and this person has employed child labor to save the children? The boy said, no, sir. I said, why? The boy said, sir, these are the ethical issues involved. Right. As an individual, social man, we have certain responsibilities. If I find that certain people are employing children, I can, as a member of society, I should inform police that this and this person are employing child labor. They are abusing the child in that sense. But as a social science researcher, there is a dilemma. As a social science researcher, if I conduct a study on child labor or something like that, on the criminals or something like that, I should not divulge the names of those things. This is ethical issue. And sometimes the social scientists, like the journalists also face this kind of problem when they collect certain secret data related to the international issue related to international relations like that, war and like that. So social scientists also should not divulge, should not breach the norm of confidentiality and should not divulge the names. So this is the story of Greek scars. And now I will move to the third issue, the fourth issue. I think the first issue, I think you have remembered, the first issue is voluntary participation. The second issue is issue of anonymity. The third issue is the issue of confidentiality. Now I will move to the next issue, that we should not do any harm to the respondents. This is the fourth ethical issue, very, very important, that we should not do any harm to the respondents. Before planning your research, you have to take into account all the possible things that can harm your respondent. So this is the fourth issue, that you should not do any harm. It may be psychological, it may be economic, it may be social, or anything else. You cannot do any harm or otherwise. You cannot do any harm. It is difficult to say, but it it is easy to say but difficult to practice, because sometimes knowingly or unknowingly we do something that can affect the life of your respondents. So this is the uh, issue of the welfare of the respondents. Look, the harm can be made in different ways. It is not that directly you are doing something and uh, which is harmful for the respondents. For example, the very famous sociologist Alan Reimer, he has given a very nice example. I should cite this example here. That suppose you have you have maintained the issue of voluntary participation, informed consent, the issue of confidentiality you have maintained, the issue of anonymity you have maintained, you have not divulged anything, any name or any identity. And you have the manner in which you have portrayed your respondents. For example, a particular community. It can harm their self-image or self-esteem. Suppose you have studied one small group and you have found certain superstitions in their culture, in their everyday life, and you have analyzed these things in your thesis and it has been published and some member of that community has read that. What you have not you have not divulged any particular name, you have not divulged any particular identity. Still, the member of that community would understand that this thesis has conducted on their community that can indirectly hamper the image of this community or self-esteem of this community. So this is a very delicate issue Alan Bryman has pointed out, that even if the researcher has maintained the issue of anonymity, the issue of confidentiality, etc., the thing can happen that unknowingly the researcher has published certain papers, certain books on that community, on that particular region, on that particular village, and the villagers, if they read that book, they will readily be able to identify themselves with those stigmatized statements or those kind of analysis that can that may bring some kind of discomfort to them. So you have to be, I'm saying again and again, that you have to be sensitized. In social science research, it is not like mixing up acids and found out how they are reacting. We are dealing with human beings who are reflexive by nature, according to women say. But women said that individuals are reflexive. They are not simply reactive. They are not simply responsive. They are also reflexive. I think you can remember the first lecture of Professor Women. So we are dealing with a very sensitive human beings, sensitive thing like human beings. So you have to be cautious. In 1967, in the USA, Earl Babbie, the famous social scientist Earl Babbie has also written a book on social methods. Earl Babbie conducted one research on the church women associated with church, and he did not mention any name. He distributed certain questionnaires to the charged women and collected data. One of the fathers of that charge, by chance, opened the questionnaire and found out certain responses. Though there are no names, no identities were divulged, but the father identified that some of the women were atheists. And this thing came very, very negatively, and some of those women, church women, were sacked, removed. That you are working in the church, but you, in your answer, though though the father could not identify individual women at first, but when he uh, came to know that some of the women are atheists, then he started looking into the matter and identified those women who are not that faithful, who are atheists. So, this is another example of making harm directly or indirectly to the respondents. Now I will move to the last issue, that is the issue of deception. This is the last issue. My first issue was voluntary participation. My second issue was the issue of anonymity. The third issue was issue of confidentiality. The fourth issue was the issue of no harm principle. And the last issue is issue of deception. How, so far, I was talking about how would you handle the identity of a respondent, whether you will divulge their name, whether you will divulge their identity, whether you will divulge their confidential things or not. Now I am talking about how do you handle your own identity. Understand the difference? So far I have said how would you handle with your the identity of your respondents. How would you manage those things? Following the principles of ethics. As far as possible, I am saying again and again, as far as possible. Now I will say, how would you handle your own identity? In most of the cases, if you say that I am a researcher, I have come with this and that purpose, people will not give you right answers or correct answers. If they give you incorrect answer, wrong answers, then your entire conclusion will be based on wrong things, incorrect things. So this is a very, very sensitive and delicate issue. You have to do so many memoirs that how far there is a solution. I have said that there is a solution to the issue of voluntary participation. Again, there is a solution I will discuss. But right now, I am raising the problem first. That how would you place yourself in the process of research before your respondents? Would you say that I am a researcher? I have come with this. This is pure honesty. This is pure honesty. This is pure honesty that I have come with this purpose. I will do a PhD on this topic. I will prepare a thesis and please give me some answers. But in most of the cases, if you divulge your true purpose, if you want to be honest, it is sometimes said, that it is very difficult to be honest, to collect honest data. What I have said, it is very difficult to be honest, to collect honest data. Because to collect honest data, that means true data, reliable data, sometimes you have to be dishonest. Sometimes you have to to deceive your respondents. You have to tell a lie. What Srinivas did not divulge his identity. That I'm an anthropologist. I have come to Rampura for this and that purpose. He went there as a villager, as like another villager. He took a rent, a house, and when the villagers of Rampura during the time of Srinivas's field war, when they refused to give answer, even Srinivas went there with his cook. He was a very good cook, and he could prepare delicious soups. And even Srinivas, even Srinivas served this soup cooked by his own cook to the villagers to make them convinced. And in this way, by distributing soups, even Srinivas convinced, built up rapport with the villagers. Anyway, so deception has become an ethical issue. Sometimes one thing you can say that it works, that if you don't say that I have come here to do PhD, rather you say I am a student. It works. Many of the respondents are convinced and they give answer, but it is again dishonesty because you are not a student, you are a researcher. But this thing you can do. Sociologists have phrased one concept, has framed rather one concept. IEFING, debriefing. Debriefing is a process by which the respondent, the researcher, at the beginning tells some other thing that I have come to this and that purpose, that is a lie. But after the research is complete, after the process is complete, when the research is over, then he calls or she calls his respondents, and now he divulges all his purposes. That, sir, sorry, my respondents, I told you certain other thing, which was a lie. I am a researcher. This was my purpose. Thank you very much for giving me right answers. So this is called debriefing. That after completion of the research, if you are forced to tell certain false things, if you have to deceive your respondents for the sake of your research, then go for debriefing. It will solve many problems. Because at least at the end of the research, you can remain honest to yourself that after getting the things done, I have come clean and I have discussed the thing openly. I have divulged my real purposes. So this is the process known as debriefing. Sometimes sociologists use this method to maintain ethical standards. I will conclude my lecture with a few small things that you should remember. That is, it is very difficult. It is very difficult to maintain all ethical standards, what I have discussed today. But please be honest to deviate from the ethical code. If your research really demands that, don't divert your ethical codes for your own interest. You can force violating the norm of voluntary participation. Certain respondents to give answer, even if you have proper scientific justifications. Mind that, with quote, that without the demand of the, if your research truly demands that, if your research scientifically just wants to do that, wants that thing to be done, only then you can violate the codes which I have discussed. Don't do it for your own interest. That it is easier, so I should violate. It should not be done. Violation is permissible, is with some degree of reservation, is permissible only when your research scientifically demands that. Only then you can violate. Actually, the ethical issues which I have discussed include three major things. First is universalism. That is, ethical issues should be universally applied to your research, throughout your research. It should not be done in this manner that certain respondents, in case of certain respondents, I have followed this, in case of certain respondents, I have not followed this. So it should not be done as far as possible. Again, I am saying, if your research demands that, you can do also that. You can violate the norm of universalism, but try to be universal as far as possible. The second is what sociologists talk about situation ethic. Situation ethic is very important in today's discourse on ethical issues. It is called situation ethic. That is, when certain situation arise, in certain situations, you have to act accordingly. So this is called situation ethic. You cannot fix it beforehand. You cannot fix it beforehand, as these things are unpredictable sometimes. When you go to the field, many things happen that is not easily predictable. So this is called situation ethic. You have to go to that situation ethic. And the first thing is universalism. These things are very much related to ethical issues. Universalism, try to be universal, try to be equally, try to treat your respondents equally as far as possible, if your research doesn't demand otherwise. The second thing is situation ethics. Contextualize your problem and try to be ethical. What is right, what is just, what is unjust. How would you treat your respondents, or all these things from ethical points of view. And the third thing is deontological ethics. Deontological ethics is a kind of Kantian imperatives. You know Kantian imperatives? That is, I should not do these things whatever happens. Whatever happens, I should not do. I should stick to those ethical principles, even if my research is jeopardized. So this is called deontological ethics. In many cases, social science researchers prefer deontological ethics. In many cases, I'm saying that crores and crores of research topics are researched every time, and all the ethical issues, though, are related, but it is not possible to apply all the ethical issues to a particular research. So situation ethics are there. You can consider the issue of situation ethics. You can also consider the issue of deontological ethics. That is the ethics for ethics itself. It is deontological ethics, is ethics for ethics itself. We should not violate. In many research cases, sociologists follow deontological ethics. That is, certain principles we should follow, despite the fact that even if research is jeopardized. So at the end of my lecture, I will say that the things you should remember. That is, try to be honest to yourself. This is number one. Try to respect the privacy and dignity of your respondent. This is number two. And number three, try to find out certain unique things, from the data you have collected, following all these, uh, ethical issues, all these ethical uh, questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for such a thought-provoking lecture. I would now like to open the meet for questions from the participants. Nagma, go ahead. Neha?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, sir. I am Neha Dasgupta, and I am a PhD student under the guidance of Shudeshna, ma'am. Sir, first of all, I would like to thank you so much for such an insightful and thought-provoking session. Sir, my question is regarding how ethical questions during the 1960s continue to be relevant even today. So, my question is that has the landscape for ethical concerns become even more complex in today's day with the growth of say media or new technologies, and do they lead to even more new and complex ethical concerns?
That's a fine question. Very good question. That is, that that I talked about enlightenment, and enlightenment philosophy entirely stands on humanism. That is, worship of human capacities of individuals, human beings. Today, we are talking about post-humanism. That is, machine is replacing human being every day. But the thing is, so far as your respondent is concerned, the major things remain the same. That is, we should not do any harm. We should maintain the privacy. We should maintain the autonomy, we should give dignity. So these things are same even today. One thing has been changed. That is, in 1960s, the issues were same, but the ethical concern itself did not take the center stage. Understand my point? If it was today's, this is 2022. If it was 1962, possibly Professor Mukherjee would not have organized this kind of lecture in your session, because today it has taken a center stage in social science research. What even forget about 1960s. I did my PhD in 1990, 1999. I was awarded PhD in 1999. I have never heard of these things in 1999. So today, in every university, even UGC has included this in their coursework syllabus, that you should have to give a lecture of 4 credits like that. UGC has also made it compulsory. So a few days after, few weeks, I shall also have to give one lecture like you. It was requested by West Bengal State University. So every university, they are organizing lectures, seminars on research ethics. So ethical issues took a very prime stage, prime position in social science research today, which was not uh, the case in 1960s. But the issues are almost same.
Thank you so much, sir.
Nagma, go ahead.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, please.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for such an enlightening lecture, sir. It will be very helpful for us in future researches that we will be doing. And here, sir, I want to say that we sometimes do research on sensitive topics, right? And then we have to deal with different kind of people.
Can you be a bit louder, please?
Sir, I'm saying that sometimes we do research or we try to find out the sensitive topics, right? So here, when we conduct research with adults who may lack decision-making capacity due to cognitive impairment, or with individuals who have experienced traumatic events or emotional traumas are there in their life. So what ethical issues should I consider in such cases? Thank you.
It is also a very pertinent question. That some sensitive issues. Remember that I talked about that we should not do any harm to the respondents. Sometimes this happens. Sometimes this happens that you are not directly doing any harm to the respondents, but you have asked certain questions about my own past. Understand? After your interview, I started thinking of my own past. What I did, it was very wrong, and I went to again a traumatic situation. I want to forget those episodes of my life. But after your interview, I started recollecting. So this is, you have to be cautious. Again, I'm saying all the ethical issues depend on the scientific justification of your own research. If your research demands that, you have nothing to do. But keep in mind that these things can appear, and you have to avoid. You have to avoid those things as far as possible. Mind that research is not very simple thing. For example, you are a student of chemistry. So you are dealing with very risky acids, for example. So you have to know how to handle those acids. Otherwise, you understand?
Yes.
You have to know, for example, you are dealing with, you are doing research on electricity. So you have to know how to handle with those instruments.
Yeah.
So similarly, but you cannot keep all those acids aside. That I will not touch all those acids. These are dangerous.
Right.
You should not do that. You have to learn how to handle those risky acids or electricity like that, or uh, uh, something like that, radioactive. For example, so many researchers work on radioactive things. It's too dangerous. So similarly, if you want to do work on some sensitive issues, you have to be skilled enough to handle those issues. Understand? Because psychologists often go deeper into the personal life. They're skilled enough. No one questions the why are you asking questions so personal? So as a sociologist, you have to be trained. You have to think, you have to do so many homeworks if you are doing certain things which is sensitive.
Yes.
Understand? Do
sir. Thank you, sir.
Think before going to the field, before responding, going to the respondent. Think these issues may come, and ask your teacher, other experts, that how should I handle, how should I minimize the harm, minimize the discomfort of the respondents. Understand?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Promita?
Any other?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Please.
Sir, firstly, thank you for such an informative lecture. It was truly, truly edifying. And thank
Is it
you.
true?
Yes, sir, it's absolutely
Oh.
true because the topics
That
that
means you are at least ethical in your evaluation?
I am trying to be, sir, because the things that you mentioned about situation ethics and deontological ethics, so all these were really new to us and at least to me. So I really learned a lot from this. So thank you, sir. Sir, my question to you is that you mentioned about how tests are being done on the prisoners and how their consent is being taken on that. You mentioned an example on that, if I'm not wrong. So my question to you is that whose consent are we actually seeking? How important is that in a research, sir? I mean, prisoners are already in a restricted premise. Their life is already regulated by the state. So in the research also, just not for the prisoners, for other communities also, sir, whose consent are we seeking? How important is that, sir, and how to deal with that? Thank you, sir.
Absolutely said. That, for example, you are doing a research on the rioting people. So, how do people are rioting? So you are collecting data. So how would you? This information was, this example was given by Alan Greiman. If you can find the book, he has given this this example as an exception of that rule. So it is not always possible to apply all the ethical issues in every research. But if it is possible, try to inform. And if that thing doesn't hamper your research, then you should inform. If you think that if you divulge your purpose, inform consent, that what you want, what you will do, all the information you will share with your respondent before taking the data. If it can hamper your own research, then please don't inform. Then go for debriefing. Okay, I have given you the solution, the debriefing. After completion, you can say that this was my purpose. So then go for debriefing. But try to be honest to yourself that what you have done for the sake of your research, not to minimize your labor, not to create any shortcut. You have done whatever you have done, that is for the sake of your research. Understand my point?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Swarupa?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, sir. Sir, my name is Swarupa. I'm a MS student at the University of Calcutta. So, sir, my question is, we learned about certain proponents of ethical issues today, and initially we got to learn about the content. We have to be informed consent, and at the same time, the last point was about issue of deception. So, in certain sensitized context or situation, we ought to make the research much more covert in nature. And when we make it covert, we are not actually being completely honest and transparent to our respondent. So there is where I think ethics is being not been put in a right form. And at the end, you mentioned about debriefing, where this is actually joining the two concepts. So my question is, sir, that how can we do informed consent at the same time when we are coverting our own identity at the same time to the researcher? And sir, another question, could you just elaborate a little more about deontology, because that is a new term. Yes.
Deontology, right. In case of overt research, that is mainly uh, done in case of participant observation or things like that. So if you, I have said, in many qualitative kind of research or anthropological researches in anthropological tradition, it is not possible to divulge your own identity. So informed consent is not possible in those cases, because in those situations we want to observe the natural life in the natural setting of the respondents. So it is not possible to comply the norm of informed consent. But for example, you have, in most of the cases, what happens? You have entered the village. Some villagers will mob you, come to you. But, and you said, I am a student, I will collect some data for this and this. So when you are saying this, you are divulging your purpose, but you are divulging your purpose partially. Understand my point?
Yes, sir.
Sometimes you are also lying there. I personally know many cases where the villagers have thought that the person who has come is a government officer, and after collecting data, they will be given something or other. So this should not be done. If you divulge your identity, make it clear that you are a student. You have not come from government welfare department, and you will not distribute certain doles and certain welfare schemes for the respondents. So there should not be any misunderstanding. But in many cases, this happens. Why happens? Because they are given consent, but it is not informed consent. They have been misguided by partial information. So if you think that if you will be able to convince your respondent, there will be no problem if you discuss with the thing your true purpose, true things, then give them complete information. Mind that partial information or distorted information is more dangerous. Understand this point?
Yes, sir.
So this should be maintained. At least what I want to say, that first of all we have to be sensitized, that we have to maintain certain ethical standards. How far we'll be able to do that is different thing. But we have to keep in our mind that we have to follow certain ethical standards. Understand? This is very important.
Yes,
Deontological ethics is a kind of ethics in which we do not consider the consequence, and then we follow the ethical principles. For example, I will not smoke cigarette in a train because police will impose fine. This is not deontological ethics. Understand this point? This is situational ethics. Deontological ethics is I will not smoke, even if there is no police or no duty. This is my own ethics. I will not bother who will punish me or not, whether I will be punished or not, who will see or not. Understand? This is deontological ethics. Ethics for ethics, you are following the principles of ethics, despite the fact, despite the consideration that who will, whether you will be punished or will be rebuked, you will not consider all these things. You are following certain principles for the only to follow that, nothing else. This is deontological. It is something similar to Kant once talked about imperatives, hypothetical imperatives and categorical imperatives. It is kind of categorical imperatives that you are following certain principles, certain norms, certain ethical codes for its own sake. Understand this point?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
This is deontological, deontological, deontological ethics.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we shall take the last question from Sukanya.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead. Hello, sir. This is Sukanya Mitra. Sir, I have a question for you. That is, at first you said about like ethic means to do the right action, right? And then you talked about the Rick Scar's cases and how he was very ethical with the respondents and did not divulge their names. But my question is, sir, that in social research, first of all, it is objective that how we are doing ethical things. And secondly, he was being very dishonest with the code when he did not divulge the identity. So in this scenario, what will be what should be considered as ethical? Like we have certain responsibilities for the social to conduct the social research. So there are also certain responsibilities lies there. And also when we are dealing with the respondents, we need to be ethical. So isn't it intersecting between two things?
Thank you very much. Look, what is ethical? What actually do we mean by ethical? Is a research of around, 2,300 something like that years. It is a research of so many years. At the time of Socrates, Greek philosopher Socrates, who lived 500 BC, these ethical issues, forget about research. What do we mean by ethics? Today we often say this is a very good girl, this is a very good boy. On what parameters we are considering you as a good boy or bad boy or good girl or bad girl? These things were not decided at the time of Socrates. Even Socrates, then Plato, then Aristotle, they search for what do we mean by good citizens, what is ethical. You will be happy to know that Aristotle wrote one book. The name of the book is Nicomachean Ethics. There are some scholars who believe that the name of Nicomachean is the name of the son of Aristotle. He has given the name of the book after his own son, Nicomachean Ethics. So even in Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle seemed to be kind of confused with what is good. Now today, we are talking about what is good for the respondent. Aristotle talked about what is good for the citizens, co-citizens. Understand? Even at the time of much later, at the time of Machiavelli, who wrote a book, the name of the book is The Prince. It was written in something in 1400 like that. Machiavelli wrote that what is ethical for the common people is not ethical for the king. Understand this, the difficulty?
Yes, sir.
King should be clever. King should be cruel. King should not tell always the truth. Machiavelli. is writing the book. Name of the book is The Prince. So what is ethical for the prince is not ethical for the common people. Machiavelli is suggesting that king should be kind of cruel, kind of he should tell something lie. Otherwise, will not be able to run the kingdom. So these things, what do we mean actually by ethics, has traversed a long way. Now we have fixed the parameters. In case of social science research, these parameters, it started, I said, during 1960s until now. The major themes has remained the same. That is, we should ensure voluntary participation as far as possible. We should maintain anonymity as far as possible. We should maintain confidentiality. We should not do any harm to the respondents as far as possible. We should not deceive our respondents as far as possible. And if we have to break the rule, there should be enough, there should have enough scientific justifications. Understand this point?
Yes, sir.
The main thing is, what is good? I told you that when I am giving this lecture, I have concentrated only the things that turns and twists that appear between you and your respondent. Understand? So if we can follow these things as far as possible, our respondents will be in a comfortable position. Understand?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We have one last question from Borshan.
Yes, ma'am. Sir, my name is Borshan Meghajana and I have just graduated from college under the Calcutta University. So my question to you is, in the 4th issue of Ethics, you told about how an research was done on the church women. And you told us that we should maintain their confidentiality as far as possible. So my question to you, sir, is that if I or any other researcher want to publish any research work or book on certain purposes, by maintaining all the ethical norms as far as possible, so what are those characters that we can possibly publish so that least harm can be done to the respondents? So what characters we can publish so those difficulties can be avoided?
The first thing is, in sociology we do not use the term character, right? We generally do not use the term character, rather than we use the term self, individual, like that. So in sociology we do not use the term character. Whatever, your point is that you can publish whatever you can want.
Okay.
Understand? But don't divulge the identity of the respondents. You can make, in sociology what we do, we can generalize the thing. Understand this point? You can generalize the pattern. You can find out the patterns, trends.
Okay.
You should not divulge the photographs of particular individual without the consent. Without consent. Understand?
Okay.
So, if you cannot give any, if you want to put certain statements, for example, you can change the name and you write name change.
Okay.
Understand?
Okay.
So, in many cases, when I write, I give certain personal narratives. that
Okay.
this respondent has said this. It is true that a particular respondent has said this. So it is for the sake of my own research, I need that statement. But I should not use the name. I should instead use another changed name. Understand? I should not say Borshan Megajana has said. Instead of I will say Darshan Megajana or like that has said. I will change the name,
Okay,
keeping
sir.
the content intact. Understand?
Okay, sir. Thank
And
you.
I can give the name also if the person himself or herself has given consent. And I will write that name unchanged. People, reader will understand that you have taken the consent of the concerned person.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, participants, for your questions. I would now like to request Dr. Sushmita Bhattacharya